Just Nick Dutch doing a very brief reading from a very old and dusty copy of the I Ching, the Book of Changes. I've had this since the early 90s, so it's the pages are getting a little yellowed, I must say. Just going to read you something from the introductory section entitled The Use of the Book of Changes, just to give you a bit of a feeling for, what it's all about, as opposed to tarot, which is something I'm more known for here on YouTube. At the outset, the Book of Changes was a collection of linear signs to be used as oracles. In antiquity, oracles were everywhere in use. The oldest amongst them confined themselves to the answers yes and no. This type of oracular pronouncement is likewise the basis of the Book of Changes. Yes was indicated by a simple unbroken line, and no by a broken line. However, the need for greater differentiation seems to have been felt at an early date, and the single lines were combined in pairs. To each of these combinations a third line was then added. In this way the 8 trigrams came into being. The 8 trigrams were conceived as images of all that happens in the heavens and on the earth. At the same time they were held to be in a state of continual transition, one changing into another, just as transition from one phenomenon to another is continually taking place in the natural world. Here we have the fundamental concept of the Book of Changes. The 8 trigrams are symbols standing for changing transitional states. They are images that are constantly undergoing change. Attention centers not only on things in their state of being, as is chiefly the case in the Occident, but upon their movements in change. The 8 trigrams, therefore, are not representation of things as such, but their tendencies in movement. Now, I don't know whether you've seen any images of trigrams before, but we've got some very simple drawings of the no forms there. There we go, the broken lines. And and that one up there is your continual 3 lines suggesting all yeses. So the one with the continual 3 lines was called Ching, and I'm sure I've pronounced that incorrectly because I've never had to actually pronounce the original Chinese. I intend to actually go into the Book of Changes with you at a later state, just to elaborate on various different sections, what the trigrams can be used for, their uses in meditation, as well as some aspects of their divinatory power, which essentially come primarily from contemplation, as well as allegory, metaphor, and many other things which I'm sure you're familiar with if you've seen some of my videos relating to tarot itself. It is a form of wisdom in its own right, just as tarot itself is a form of wisdom, or indeed a source whereby you can reflect your own wisdom with, if you get my drift. You can use it almost like a mirror, because there's ideas inside you, there's ideas inside the symbolism, and you can start building up that kind of like conversation between yourself and the signs themselves. I Ching has, to a certain extent, been important in the development of certain aspects of Western occultism, including what is commonly called high magic, which tends to rely very heavily upon symbology, essentially as a means of fine-tuning one's mind to a particular set of energies, or, as I've mentioned before, the word energies means like personalities, characters, thoughts, feelings, moods, and all the rest of that, because the word energy is a bit of a weak, woolly, new agey way of saying some defining characteristics. And the Book of Changes is quite a good way of focusing on those characteristics and how to kind of like dial in, so to speak, to those specific feelings. And even if you get it reasonably specific, you can move beyond that and try and extrapolate that to anything like a spirit energy or a demon energy, or to a natural force, or to a personality of an individual, and so on and so forth. The I Ching has actually been an inspiration for some forms of business modeling as well. So it's definitely a very important text, and it's something which I haven't actually covered all that much, and I feel a little guilty about that. But don't worry, soon my guilt will steadily start to ebb away. Obviously, I'm someone who has, for career reasons, specialized on tarot, but you know, I do use runes as well, and I do play around with the I Ching too, so we can just build up a bit of an understanding of divination in a more complex pattern, so to speak. And I'll speak to you in a while. God bless.